So if you're looking at the calendar right now and you're seeing 2026 just staring back at you and you're feeling this like deep sinking sensation that you are somehow completely falling behind in life.
Which is such a heavy feeling. Yeah.
It really is. But here's the thing. Your problem is not a lack of motivation. I mean, your problem is that you are actively trying to win a game whose rules were written by someone entirely different.
Right.
You know, you look around, you see your peers getting promotions, buying houses, maybe mastering these new skills, and you just get hit with this heavy, like, I'm late syndrome.
Oh, absolutely. The I'm late syndrome is real.
Yeah, it's like everyone else has this highly detailed map, and you're just standing there at the trailhead with empty hands, trying to figure out how to, execute a complete reinvention without totally burning out by next Tuesday.
Right, which is impossible. And, that feeling of being perpetually late, it's actually a recognizable psychological phenomenon.
Really?
Yeah, and it's heavily amplified by what we call a chapter compare syndrome.
Chapter compare syndrome.
Exactly. So we have this cognitive bias that basically forces us to compare our behind-the-scenes struggles, like our season 2, so to speak, against the highlight reel of someone else's season 5. Your brain is literally taking the messy, unedited, raw footage of your daily life, and it's weighing it against the carefully curated, highly polished end results of others.
Which is just a recipe for disaster.
Totally. It creates an immediate sense of deficit. But, the mechanics of a true 2026 comeback, they don't start with just ignoring other people. The core issue is usually that you're experiencing this severe cognitive dissonance because, well, you're chasing an inherited dream.
Okay, inherited dreams. I love this concept, meaning like you're taking on these versions of success that were quietly handed down to you by your family or your culture or just society at large.
Yes, exactly.
And you just accept them as your own default settings. Like you inherit these templates about respectability, stability, or, what a good career is supposed to look like. And then you spend decades trying to optimize a life that you never actually, pause to question.
Precisely. I mean, there is a vast neurological difference between guidance and inheritance.
How so?
Well, guidance provides a framework for your own executive function to make choices. But inheritance, it just bypasses your decision-making process entirely.
Wow. Yeah. It makes the choice for you.
Exactly. And if you never interrogate those inherited goals, they just become a trap. Because on paper, your life might look incredibly successful to an outside observer.
Right. You check all the boxes.
You check the boxes, but internally you experience this really strange sense of depersonalization. You feel weirdly absent from your own daily routine because you're walking a path that satisfies all these external metrics, but it completely starves your internal baseline values.
Yeah. And there is a really vivid way to conceptualize this from the sources that just completely shifts how you view that internal resistance.
Oh, the shoe analogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Living an inherited dream is essentially like walking around in shoes that are like a half size too small.
It's such a great way to put it.
Right. Because it doesn't cause this agonizing acute pain the very second you put them on. It's not like breaking your leg.
No, it's subtle.
It's just a constant low-grade mismatch, like a persistent signal that something just isn't right. But instead of seeing that discomfort as a failure on our part to just be happy with what we have.
Yeah.
We actually need to recognize that discomfort for what it really is.
Which is a biological alarm system.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's what we call an allostatic load. Your brain is just constantly burning energy, trying to reconcile who you actually are with who you are forcing yourself to be.
Which sounds exhausting.
Oh, it's completely exhausting. And that low-grade friction, it isn't a sign that you're ungrateful or broken. It is the necessary friction of clarity. The exact moment you finally stop numbing that discomfort and just ask, wait, is this actually the life I chose? That is the moment your prefrontal cortex comes back online.
Yeah.
And that's when real transformation becomes mechanically possible.
But, okay, so the moment you actually take those uncomfortable shoes off,
Yeah.
right, and you realize, oh man, I've been walking in the wrong direction for years.
Yeah.
The immediate instinct for most of us is to just panic.
Yeah.
Like you draft this massive punishing to-do list
Yeah.
to make up for lost time. You're like, I'm going to overhaul my entire life by 5 a.m. tomorrow.
Which never works.
Never.
No.
Because a sustainable comeback doesn't start with a frantic action plan. From everything we're looking at here, it starts with an identity shift.
Yeah.
You can't just change what you are doing. You have to fundamentally alter the underlying belief of who you are.
Yeah. And the neuroscience behind this is entirely driven by how the brain filters reality. We're talking about the reticular activating system, or, the RAS.
The RAS, right? This is a huge aha moment in the deep dive.
It's fascinating because at any given moment, your brain is just bombarded by millions of bits of sensory information.
Right, sights, sounds, everything.
Exactly. And to prevent you from going into sensory overload and just completely short-circuiting, the RAS acts as a gatekeeper. It filters out almost everything, and it only allows a tiny fraction of data into your conscious awareness.
Okay, makes sense.
But here is the really critical part. The RAS is programmed by your identity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it actively hunts for evidence in your environment that proves your deeply held beliefs are true.
Okay, so wait. If your internal script is, I'm a chronic procrastinator, your RAS is literally going to filter out all those moments where you were actually focused, and it hyper-highlights the times you, scroll on your phone for an hour just to validate that identity.
You nailed it. You are biologically programming yourself to fail because your perception of reality literally bends to match your self-image.
That's wild.
The RAS doesn't care if a belief is positive or negative. It really doesn't. It only cares about congruence. So if you identify as someone who is, say, bad at learning new things, your brain will interpret a really challenging chapter in a textbook, not as just a normal part of the learning curve, but as definitive proof of your inadequacy.
See, I knew I was stupid.
Exactly. So to execute a comeback, you have to reprogram that filter. You have to shift the script from, I am bad at this, to, I am the kind of person who...
Okay, and let me push back on this a little bit, because realistically,
Sure.
If I'm lying in bed on a Saturday morning, and I'm completely exhausted, entirely unmotivated, right? And I start telling myself out loud, I am a highly productive person.
Right.
It just feels like I'm completely lying to myself.
Okay.
The brain isn't stupid. It knows I'm lying in bed.
Yeah.
How is this identity shifting mechanism actually any different from just, holotoxic positivity?
That is such a good point. And it's the exact trap most people fall into when they try doing daily affirmation.
Right, just staring in the mirror, chanting things.
Yeah, the brain will totally reject a sudden extreme claim that lacks any behavioral evidence to back it up.
Okay, so what do we do?
Well, the shift isn't about delusional perfection. It is about visualizing the future self you want to become and then using that vision as a filter for your next immediate choice. You're simply abandoning the outdated, rigid story of who you used to be.
Oh, I see.
Look at the classic example from the sources. Colonel Sanders starting KFC in his late 60s.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
The chronological age there is irrelevant. The neurological flexibility is what actually matters. If his internal narrative remained, I am a failed businessman who is too old to start over, his RAS would have filtered out every single opportunity.
Right. You wouldn't have even seen them.
Exactly. So the shift isn't I am a perfect success. The shift is I used to quit when things got hard, but now I am the kind of person who is learning to finish things.
Oh, I love that phrasing. I used to quit, but now I am learning to finish. It's like it provides a bridge.
Yes, a brace.
It acknowledges the past behavior yeah, I used to quit, without letting it completely dictate the future identity. It creates this cognitive opening that doesn't trigger the brain's BS detector.
Exactly. You're not lying to yourself.
But, once you create that opening, you need to actually provide your RAS with new evidence, right? You have to actually put points on the board.
You have to act.
Right. And we all know the math behind, the 1% rule improving a tiny bit every day compounds massively over a year.
Yeah.
But where that rule actually fails people in practice is the execution part.
Always.
Because how do we actually bypass the brain's natural resistance to sitting down and doing the work?
This all comes down to understanding limbic friction and the amygdala stat response.
Okay, explain that.
So when you set a massive goal, let's say you say, I am going to write a novel this year, or I'm going to work out for 2 hours every single day. Your executive function, the logical part of you, understands that this is a positive, healthy goal.
Right. It makes logical sense.
But your amygdala, which is the primitive part of your brain responsible for survival, it looks at the massive energy expenditure required for that goal, and it registers it as a threat.
Really, a threat?
Yes. It actually triggers a stress response to stop you from burning through your metabolic resources.
Okay, that makes so much sense. It's kind of like, and this analogy really clicked for me. It's like trying to get into this really exclusive nightclub with a massive rowdy entourage of 20 people.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. So the bouncer at the door, which is your amygdala, he sees this huge crowd. He anticipates all this chaos and a massive drain on the club's resources, and he just instantly drops the velvet rope.
Yeah.
denied entry.
Yep, absolutely denied.
But a micro action, like just a tiny 1% step, is like slipping past that exact same bouncer all alone, wearing a plain t-shirt, just keeping your head down. The bouncer doesn't even register you as a threat, so you just walk right in.
That is the exact physiological mechanism at play, honestly. Shrinking the habit lowers the limbic friction so much that the amygdala just doesn't flag it.
Wow.
If your goal is to write a book, the habit cannot be write for 2 hours. The amygdala will block that every time. The habit has to be write one single sentence.
Just one sentence?
Or if you want to get fit, it isn't go to the gym for an hour. It's, drink 1 glass of water or stretch for 60 seconds. You just make the barrier to entry so ridiculously low that your brain cannot logically formulate an excuse to say no.
Which completely solves the problem of what psychologists call executive dysfunction.
Yes.
Or what I like to call being trapped in the waiting room of the brain.
Yeah.
Like you have all these grand plans sitting there holding a numbered ticket, just waiting for the perfect time to start or waiting for this massive surge of motivation.
But motivation is notoriously unreliable.
Exactly. It's entirely unreliable. So by relying on a micro action that takes literally 2 minutes, you bypass the need for motivation entirely.
You do.
You sneak past the bouncer every single day, and suddenly you've accumulated this massive amount of behavioral evidence for your RAS to say, oh, hey, prove that your new identity is real.
Yeah, and we know that consistency builds neurological momentum, but we do have to look at the other side of the equation here. What happens when the frictionless environment fails? Because willpower is not a character trait, it is a highly depletable biological resource.
Oh, that's a crucial distinction.
It is. If you spend your entire morning fighting the urge to check your phone and making difficult decisions at work and managing stress, you experience what's called ego depletion.
Ego depletion.
Yeah. Basically, by 3:00 p.m., your prefrontal cortex is exhausted and your primitive brain just takes over. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because you are biologically bankrupt.
Which means we really can't just rely on brute force. If you want to survive ego depletion, you have to utilize environment design to do the heavy lifting for you before you get tired.
Exactly. You manipulate the friction.
Right. If you want to stop doom scrolling, you don't just sit there and tell yourself to be stronger. You put the phone in a totally different room. You delete the apps. You add so many layers of friction to the bad habit that when you're eventually exhausted, the effort required to scroll is simply way too high.
And conversely, if you want to write your one sentence, you leave your notebook open on your desk with the pen resting right on top of it.
Make it easy.
You make the positive choice the absolute laziest option available in your environment.
You're basically offloading your willpower into your physical space.
Yeah.
Like you change the architecture of your choices so that the default path of least resistance leads directly to your goal.
Right.
But, even with impeccable environment design, we have to talk about the inevitable breakdown.
Oh, it will happen.
Because there will be a day when you get sick or a crisis hits at work or you just hit this massive wall of exhaustion and you drop the ball completely. You miss the micro action. You break the chain.
Right.
And this is where the entire 2026 comeback is usually won or lost, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because missing one single day isn't actually the problem. The problem is the psychological cascade that happens right after you miss the day.
The spiral.
Yes, it's the abstinence violation effect, which is more commonly known as the what the hell effect.
Oh, I've definitely had that.
Right. You miss one Tuesday workout and suddenly your brain says, well, the streak is broken, the week is ruined, so what the hell, I might as well eat a whole pizza and stop trying until next month.
Yes.
You enter a shame spiral that just completely collapses your entire new identity.
And that shame spiral is incredibly destructive because it triggers this massive dopamine crash and it just reinforces the old negative identity script, doesn't it?
It does. Your RAS suddenly perks up and says, aha, see? I told you we were a quitter.
Right.
So to neutralize this, you have to fundamentally alter the vocabulary of your internal dialogue. You have to basically eliminate black and white thinking by replacing the word but with the word and.
Wait, explain how just swapping that one word changes the cognitive load.
Well, when you use the word but, you create a binary opposition that usually invalidates whatever effort you just made.
Okay.
If you say to yourself, I really tried to stick to my plan today, but I failed, your brain focuses entirely on the failure. It feels like a permanent character flaw.
The but erases the effort.
Exactly. However, if you shift that phrasing to, I missed my microaction today and I will restart tomorrow, you completely remove the friction of shame.
Oh, wow.
Right? You are holding two truths simultaneously. I experienced a setback, and I am still the kind of person who is moving forward. It massively lowers the emotional stakes of the mistake.
And keeps the psychological door open.
Yeah,
It stops the failure from becoming your identity. Like you acknowledge the misstep without making it a permanent tattoo,
exactly.
which perfectly sets up the mechanical concept of falling forward, because when you inevitably break a pattern, the biological instinct is to retreat to safety, right?
Always.
To fall backward into the familiar, comfortable routine, to put those wrong size shoes back on, because, even though they hurt, at least you know exactly how they hurt.
Exactly. But falling forward is a function of resilience, not perfection. You have to realize the metric for a successful reinvention is not how perfectly you maintain a streak. The actual metric is your bounce back rate.
Bounce back rate. I love that.
Yeah. If you miss a Tuesday, the old version of you would just wait until next Monday to try again. But the new version of you, the one executing the comeback, restarts on Wednesday.
Right away.
Right away. You contain the failure to a single data point. You basically prove to your nervous system that a temporary lapse does not destroy the overarching trajectory.
Man, so if we map this entire architecture out, the blueprint for navigating 2026 is actually incredibly methodical. First, you have to diagnose that I'm late, feeling not as a failure, but as the cognitive dissonance of living an inherited dream.
Right, acknowledging the shoes don't fit.
Exactly. You recognize that the discomfort is just your internal alarm system begging you to course correct. Then you stop trying to frantically change your actions, and you start reprogramming your reticular activating system by adopting a totally new identity. You give your brain a new filter.
Yep. And then you feed that filter with undeniable behavioral evidence by slipping past the brain's threat detection system.
Sneaking past the bouncer.
Sneaking past the bouncer. You use micro-actions to bypass the amygdala entirely. And you protect your limited daily energy through ruthless environment design, making the good habits wholly frictionless and the bad habits completely exhausting.
And when the system breaks down, because it definitely will, you refuse the abstinence violation effect.
Yeah.
You refuse the shame spiral. You swap but for and, you contain the failure, and you prioritize your bounce back rate to ensure you are always falling forward.
Beautifully said.
You don't need a soaring cinematic soundtrack to completely change your life.
Yeah.
You just need to outsmart your own biology, one tiny, quiet, seemingly insignificant choice at a time.
Absolutely. And, there is one final really vital paradigm shift to consider as you implement this framework.
Okay, what is it?
We are so culturally conditioned to treat our goals, especially something like a comeback, as a strict deadline.
Oh, yeah, like New Year's resolutions.
Right. We think, if I don't achieve this specific metric by December 31st, the entire year was a waste. But a much more neurologically sound approach is to treat your dream not as a deadline, but as a compass.
A compass?
Yeah, think about it. A compass doesn't judge how fast you are walking, it only provides a direction. So if a dream is simply a bearing pointing you toward your core values, then feeling lost or behind isn't actually a failure at all.
Wow.
What if the exact moments you feel the most disoriented and late are simply the required coordinates your compass needs to finally calibrate to your true north?
Wow. That fundamentally changes your relationship with failure. The moments you feel the most behind aren't detours, they're the exact data points required to finally map out where you actually belong.
Listen, your 2026 does not have to be a copy-paste of last year, unless you passively allow it to be. You have the mechanics now. You understand the biology of the resistance. Now, it's really just about slipping past the bouncer today. Take off the shoes that don't fit, pick one micro-action, and start building the evidence. We will see you on the next deep dive.